All right, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I brought a bowl, and I wondered if any of you may know why I brought this. It will come clear at one point. So I'm going to leave it here, and at one point look back at it, and you will understand why I brought this. The second one that I wanted to ask you is, who here is an entrepreneur? So we're about half of the room. And who here would like to typically improve their well-being? Who feels they're slightly challenged? You don't need to be an entrepreneur, it can be anyone. So what we have is we have two types of people. We have the entrepreneurs in the room, and we also have the people that want to work on themselves. And what I wanted to do today is to be a bridge between the entrepreneurial journey, the pressure of building a startup, and some Japanese principles that are allowing myself, when I used to be in Tokyo, but also entrepreneurs going forward to be able to take care of themselves. So what I wanted to start is often, like everything, it's a story. It's a story that started 6 years ago in Tokyo. It was during a fintech conference, and you had the energy of the after party, and as you can see on the picture, everyone was celebrating. Some of you will see on that picture familiar faces, and some of you will notice one thing. I'm not on that picture. This was the 27th of September 2018. I unknowingly began the first chapter of my journey about supporting founders' mental health. Today, I want to share with you my untold story that started in Tokyo. It was a story that was linked, without me knowing, with Japanese philosophies. But before I do that, I want to step a step back and give you a story of friendship. As you can see on that picture, there was something that is not being told. Everyone inside the bar was shouting "Kenpai," were drinking a lot, and one was not. She was physically there, as you can see with a lot of entrepreneurs. They're in the room, but mentally she was not. She was outside, her mind was gone. She was on the phone, she was outside, she was not focused, and so I thought, I'm going to write her 2 words. Take a break. I gave it to her, we hugged, she went back on the phone, she stopped, we talked. And as it often happens, when you give an advice to someone, I'm going to take a break. It's an important element. It's a personal journey, and when you share something personal that is also physically close to you, it's difficult to come back to it. It might be 7 years ago, but if you think about it, those moments in life shape you. And what I'm doing today to you and what I'm sharing, what I've been able to put together in this speech, is the capacity for me to understand why Japan, for the last 7 years of my life, have been such an important place. And that's what I'm sharing with you. And this is why it's a little bit more personal than what you normally do. So, going back onto my tracks, as it often happens, when you give an advice to someone, I think all of you will be able to relate that. You don't just give an advice to someone, you're talking to yourself. I was advising her on what I didn't know was my own personal journey. And I was telling her what actually would happen to me a few years later. I showed her an article that was on my phone, and that article was the psychological cost of the entrepreneurial journey. It was brutal. And I had it always open on my phone for the many years of me building the largest fintech accelerator at the time. And so what I did to her was, I was warning her of the financial risk, the financial instability, the mental stress, the health neglect, and the isolation that you can have as a founder. I told her to take time for herself, to take a break. And as often with friends, like I was telling you, this discussion was really a mirror of what I needed and what I wanted to hear. I wasn't advising her. I was asking help for myself. And so that's perhaps the first element of the Japanese philosophy that I wanted to bring into. For you that are Japanese on stage and on the room, you have the topic of gaman. I wasn't ready to understand that even though I had traction, even though I was a man, even though I was strong, this term was related to me. It directly relates to one of the key terms that you define entrepreneurship with, resilience. Gaman means enduring seemingly unbearable with patience and dignity. When you think about founders and entrepreneurial journey, you can understand how gaman relates to it. So if it sounds familiar, it's not because it is. Founders need to develop a mindset in order to successfully grow their company whilst overcoming all their challenges. I was defining myself with my capacity of being able to persevere through all the hardship of entrepreneurship, all the setbacks, without understanding the difficulty of the outside world. But this is a mistake that many entrepreneurs make. Unlike the ancient samurai who get pride in not speaking up, the silent resilience of gaman is a trap for founders. This silence makes us forget that if we don't ask for help, we won't be able to have it. Therefore, for the founders, you need to go and be able to voice your own struggles. Breaking the taboo that surrounds founder journey and well-being is a critical part of it. We need empathy in the startup ecosystem. We need empathy here in this room. And this brings me to the next slide, which is the title of this presentation. Omoyari, the bridge to founder well-being. So why Omoyari? Omoyari is commonly translated into empathy, but actually it means something much more precise. It comes from omoi, which is thought, and yari, which derives from miaru, which means give or send. So literally it means give your thoughts to other. So with all of you in this room, what I want to do is I want to build a bridge and give you my thoughts. I want to connect the Japanese key philosophies to improve founder well-being. I want Japanese tradition to strengthen the global startup ecosystem. In the shadow of startup isolation and competition, Omoyari is a fresh of breath air because it gauges the capacity of giving in our heart an important element, sharing what people care about, understanding the founders and their journey, and finally being able to share the weight on our shoulder to other people. The philosophy not only cultivates culture, but it also supports and reminds us that at the heart of entrepreneurship, there's a key element, paying forward. And for now, the people which are paying are the entrepreneurs. Some of you and most of you will know that number, 90%. 90% is the number of startups that vanish into the night, not being able to accomplish their vision. The more you try, the less you fail. And yet, it is very difficult for founders to say they fail. So what is the other 10% here? That other 10% is not the founders that succeed. That would be too easy, and I expect more of you. No, the 10% here is the numbers of founders which are willing to talk to their investors about their mental health difficulties. Now you may say if only 10% of founders have mental health difficulty, everyone talks about. No, it's not the case. 72% of founders have mental health difficulties. So this is a mistake not to speak up, because I mentioned, if you don't speak, people cannot help. And Often the capacity of not speaking is because you have a fear of failure that you do not want to share with others, especially in the context of Asia, where failure is frowned upon. But there's a proverb that says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Or in Japanese, nanakorobi yaoki. If we tell kids that enduring failure is part of learning and okay, why are we not able, us as adults, to be able to have it? Because we forget that behind every single startup and venture, there's a human story. A narrative of hope, fear, relentless ambition, and pursuit of something greater. We must acknowledge that the truth is here in order to dismantle the problem around founder well-being. Japanese philosophy is filled with principles that we can reflect upon every single day. So let's deconstruct the history of this principle and build together a stronger founder ecosystem. Who here knows this principle? Suhari. One? So Suhari is a concept which is fascinating. It describes the learning stage of mastery. Shu means follow the rule. Ha means breaking the rule. Ri means making your own rule. And now you can start to understand how founders actually apply into this. At first, founders closely follow an established business model, which is Shu, learning from the past. But as you gain that learning and that knowledge, you start to question and modify those methods into personal insight. Ha. And this ultimately leads to innovation into a brand new standard, Ri. So let me give you an example of a startup in Japan, which is much more than a startup, that encompasses Suhari. Sony. Sony began improving existing technology like the transistor, the radio transistor, and this is the Shu. It then introduced a game-changing product that was the Walkman, Ha. And ultimately, it created a brand new market category, Ri. So how can you apply Suhari into your personal well-being as a founder? It's not only about the course of entrepreneurial innovation, but it's also about your own personal mental well-being journey. Initially, founders may strictly adhere to the norms of the hardship of entrepreneurship and the expectation of success. Burnout is a badge of honor, Shu. This can then often lead to stress and burnout. And as they progress, they start to question these norms. Ha. And finally, you recognize the importance of self-care, but like every entrepreneur, your method of caring for yourself is unique to what you need. Ri. So ultimately, what you start to understand is that the true mastery is understand oneself and oneself well-being and your mental health as a founder. So now that you know how to build a startup with the principle of Suhari, I wanted to give you 3 methods to take care of your well-being. Kintsugi, Shirin-yoku, Wabi-sabi. In short, Kintsugi teaches us how to find the beauty of brokenness. Shirin-yoku helps us find peace into nature. And finally, Wabi-sabi is accepting the impermanence of our venture. So let's take them one by one, and let me explain you how they can help you. Kintsugi is the art of golden repair. It serves as a poignant metaphor that what is a founder's journey. We talked about failure. We talked about the difficulty of building a company. We talk about putting yourself back together, for example, now back on stage. It teaches us that the failures and the fractures we will have in our journey as a life should not be hidden, but should be honored. They're scars that we should wear proudly. They're scars that make us richer. And this is filled with the gold of the lesson that what we learn. The crackers of our venture in these moments will find the true resilience and the path forward to build a company. Those cracks, those scars, those golden veins in that bowl are the testament of our ability to rise, rebuild, and shine together. Now, you can take one example that all of you will know. the golden child of Silicon Valley, Steve Jobs. He was fired from Apple in 1985. He transformed his failure into building another company, Next. He then built Pixar. And then he returned into a company that was near bankruptcy, Apple, to build it into the revolutionary company that it is today. Therefore, as you can see, many entrepreneurs that you see in your journey have their failure, and we should celebrate them in the same way that this piece of art is so much more valuable than that bowl here. The second principle is Shirin-yoku. It's very unique to Japanese, and there is no real word in English. It is about forest bathing. It suggests that founders can benefit from disconnecting and benefiting from being in nature to reduce stress, clear their mind, boost creativity, which is all essential for their well-being. You don't always need to go forest bathing to understand that, but I think all of you will have moments where when you went out for a walk, when you took a shower, when you took a break, you were more creative and you had that one idea that made a big difference. This is Shirin-yoku. And it's not just me telling you. Science is clear. A study found that participants participating in forest bathing had a capacity of reducing their stress, their cortisol, their pulse rate, their blood pressure, all of which is able to sustain your entire journey of entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurship is a marathon. And I'll give you another statistic. It takes 10 years to be successful overnight. So you need to be able to restrain and pace yourself. And again, I wanted to give you another founder that does this. Arianna Huffington. She herself said that disconnecting from the routine and spending time in nature is not a luxury. It's actually the most effective way for her to make time for herself, irrespective of how busy she is, in order to build the company that she has. One of the most successful businesswomen there is. So for me, this place in nature was Japan when I used to come, and that's the reason why I was always so keen on coming to Japan, but it's also the mountains of Austria. The third principle that I wanted to tell you is wabi-sabi. It's the notion of Japanese aesthetic that shows that there is beauty in imperfection. This is a critical element, and I would like you to pause on it. Very often when we think about founders, we think that they have the answer for every single problem you throw at them. We think that they're superheroes. We think that they are Superman. We think that they're perfect. But they're not. Perfection for founders is not the case. They will make mistakes. The only question is, will the decision that they make overall be the right one? And that's why this is a very important element. Perfection in entrepreneurs is not what we always need. And this is particularly important in the Japanese context, where we looked at entrepreneurs as perfect beings. I'll give you one more example of that. There was a very successful startup that embraced the notion of imperfection as a way to be successful. That startup is Twitter, now X. Its initial appeal was about the capacity of presenting authentic thought in an imperfect way and communicating it straight away. The simplicity of this platform that relied on one element, which is 140 characters, being concise, and being imperfect of sharing your fleeting moment of a thought or a tweet, is what made the success of this company. That limitation is one of the most celebrated features of Twitter, and it's one of the reasons why it has built that status that it is today. So for founders, this philosophy embraces you to understand that the entrepreneurial journey that you're about to take is not perfect. It will have ups and downs, and you will need to recognize that those unpolished moments of your entire life will come to a single conclusion where the destination is more important than the journey. So in a couple of weeks, there's something very important happening in Japan. Who can know what it is? We are 3-4 weeks away from it. Anyone? Who said Hanami? It is. And for those of you that don't understand what that is, it is the moment where people gather to start observing nature. It directly translates into flower viewing. It's a cherished Japanese tradition, which is about celebrating the fleeting beauty of cherry blossom. During the spring, it embodies transition, non-permanence, and it's a gentle passing of one state to another. Here again, there's a lesson for entrepreneurs. In the fast-paced world of entrepreneurship and startup, taking a moment to stop and reflect can provide you clarity, reduce burnout, increase and foster gratitude. So just as the cherry blossom blooms, brilliantly but briefly, startups go through a cycle of growth and change, therefore embracing impermanence. Hanami symbolizes renewal. For entrepreneurs, that can translate into your thinking of constantly seeking innovation, being open to change, not just for your product, but for also your own personal well-being. And so now, for the founders that are here in the room, or for the people that know founders, you'll never look at a sakura tree the same way. So, what I wanted to leave you with is notion for you to be able to embrace a few elements. Think about the spirit of Omiyari, the resilience of Kintsugi, the rejuvenation of Shirin-yoku, the acceptance of wabi-sabi, and finally, the mindful appreciation of Hanami. These principles are rooted in ancient wisdom. And of course, the startup ecosystem is more recent, but there are things that we can learn from the past. And I tried to be that bridge from what we can learn from the past to build a better future. So let's try to take these lessons beyond these walls. Let's try to share it with other founders in Japan and tell them about your visit here and how this has given you a different perspective on the entrepreneurial journey. Let's hope that what you've learned here will be able to be exported outside of Japan, so that Japan's contribution to the global startup ecosystem can be uniquely Japanese and differentiated, showing to London and to Silicon Valley that Japan has much more to offer than they ever think they can. Gozeichou, arigatou gozaimashita.